Hello, everyone. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations, and this is The View from the Hill, the podcast of Lindsey Wilson University. Every week during the academic year, The View from the Hill features conversations with some of the people who help create the dynamic living, learning environment that serves the educational needs of every Lindsey Wilson student every day. In this 19th podcast of the 2025-2026 school year, we will preview the 2026 spring theater season at Lindsey Wilson. The 2026 spring season of the Lindsey Wilson Department of Theater will feature 3 productions. One will take a look at Irish culture, the other is a prequel of a classic children's story, and the third will be a feel-good evening of popular music. Joining me to preview the spring season are Professor Robert Brock and Kassidy Phelps of the Lindsey Wilson Department of Theater. Of course, to read more about Lindsey Wilson's vibrant theater program, you can check it out on the World Wide Web at lindsey.edu/theater. Let's start off with the music, because that is what will open this spring season of theater at Lindsey Wilson. A Grand Night for Singing will be performed on March 26, 27, and 29. And Kassidy, why don't you tell us a little about that evening? It's going to be a night of singing, and I assume it's going to be pretty grand.
It will. We hope so. It's filled with everything from Golden Age musicals, so some classic musical theater that are familiar to some of you all, and then it goes all the way through some early 2000s musicals. So anything from Oklahoma to South Pacific to Wicked and Rent. So it spans a wide range. So we're excited.
Is this the first time Lindsey Wilson's produced something like this?
It has. We've done musical theater reviews before, but they were kind of paced a little differently. So we wanted to do a big bunch of songs that really emphasize musical theater over some decades.
In terms of the selections that students are going to perform, how did they come about? How did they decide what they're going to perform that evening?
Well, after their auditions, we did an audition and then we did a callback, and then me and Robert met and we just went through some lists of musicals that were some well-known and some that the students are not necessarily familiar with, and we wanted to introduce them to some of those. And so we just kind of selected that together out of a wide variety.
Talk a little bit about musical theater in general. You know, it's one of those interesting genres that you have this song that exists because it's to advance the plot, to explain the plot, comment on the plot, but yet it also stands alone as a song. And that's sort of, I guess, unique. A lot of people might not even realize that some of the songs they like are part of a musical show.
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's interesting with musical theater because I think so many of those songs you can take them out of context and they still apply to so many people. And I think that reaches a unique audience of theater goers that maybe not necessarily are familiar with theater in general, but they are familiar with those musical theater songs. So it's really cool.
And musical theater really cuts across generations, doesn't it? There's something that appeals to someone whether they're all the way from 8 to 80, as the cliche goes.
It does. Sometimes they start with Disney when they're pretty young, and then that goes on through generations that are used to musicals like West Side Story or anything from that kind of genre or that area. Yeah.
Thinking back to your own experiences, how did you first become acquainted with musical theater, and what was the musical that sort of pulled you into the genre?
The first musical I ever did was with BAFA, Burkesville Academy of Fine Arts, in Burkesville, and it was Mary Poppins. And so I was the Bird Woman. That's a pretty long, expansive musical. Like the movie it's pretty long, but that was the first one that I did that got me kind of interested in theater altogether. I think after that I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm hooked, let's stay.
Then in April, we're going to shift to Irish culture with a play called Belfast Girls. That will be performed April 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 12th. Just like Grand Night for Singing, it will be performed in the historic VP Henry Auditorium. It's a new play set in 1850 that follows 5 Irish girls on their way to Australia. Opened in 2022. Robert Brock, you're going to be directing this play. What was it about this play that appealed to you?
Well, first of all, this is a part of a big Irish thing going on between the theater and English departments. We put together a whole course. There's a trip to Ireland. 26 students who are taking the course are going to go on that trip. And then our part, the theater, was to put on a play. We did the Weir last April, whenever it was. Anyway, spring. And so that was kind of to introduce that. We've been planning this cooperative effort for about 2 years. And so this is the play we're putting on as part of that. And I had a lot of trouble choosing a play because so many of the Irish plays are male heavy. The ones that are known, like Playboy of the Western World and things like that. But I found this play, I just came across it. I don't remember where exactly. And it was written by Jackie McCarrick, and she didn't even know this story. She came across it doing research on something else, and then this piqued her interest, and she followed the rabbit hole down into this. It's a little known piece of Irish history, but it's 5 women. So I was looking for something that had more women than men, because we have more women than men in the theater program. And when I read about it, I thought, boy, that's really strange and interesting. But in 1850, this is right after the potato famine, a lot of starvation going on in Ireland, a lot of trouble. And Earl Grey, whom the tea is named after, he put together this plan to ship a number of moral and upstanding orphan women to Australia, where there were mostly men there, to help populate the island and populate it with morality and this kind of stuff. And that was the propaganda around this effort. But really it was a way to lessen the number of mouths to feed after the famine, and it was also a way to get rid of the disreputables, the women they didn't like, because most of them weren't orphans, weren't so morally upstanding. A lot of them were prostitutes and that sort of thing. But they ended up shipping 4,000 women to Australia during this. I think it was called the Earl Grey Plan. Plan's not the right word. There's another word for it. But anyway, so we follow 5 women on the boat. The whole play is on the boat, heading out or sailing to Australia, and all the things they go through and talk about and everything. And you learn a lot about the plight of women in Ireland at that time, and what they're escaping, what they're hoping for in Australia, what they're hoping could happen, how their lives could change. So I think people will enjoy it. I hope they will. I know the actresses or actors will get a lot out of this. This is a big challenge. And that's what they were asking me for, because we've done some really challenging works with them. Shiloh Rules, a lot of the Shiloh Rules women are in it, and they wanted that kind of thing. They wanted to do some really heavy, deep stuff and really have to dig deep into a character, and so this really works. And I think it supports the Irish program we're doing this spring, too.
One of the things I think so interesting about this play is that, as you mentioned, it tells a piece of Irish history that a lot of folks might not be familiar with. They're familiar with the American immigration from Ireland, but I would guess that most people don't realize that some Irish women were sent to Australia, which was founded as a penal colony, to sort of civilize and make the nation of Australia a better place.
Something worked. I mean, I think Australia is a great place now, but it started out the worst of the worst were sent there, and these women weren't considered really any different than that. It was just I'll never be able to drink Earl of Grey tea again the same way. I liked it, but now it's like, wait a minute, this guy. That's what Jackie McCarrick was saying, something I read, that she didn't know of this. So many of the Irish didn't know of this. This was just something that happened and got wiped away, basically, or lost, under a lot of other stuff with Irish history.
And what's really, I think, interesting about the play, I've not seen it, only read it, is the fact that you have 5 very different stories aboard this ship that you learn about throughout the play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They've all got their own story. They've all got their own perspective on things. They've been through very different kinds of life, and they come together and they have to sort of get along a little bit with each other, and so you learn a lot, but it's also kind of a gripping story at times and what they're going through. I think what touches me the most is the ending, when they're so hoping for a new life, a new start. Everything can change, but the feeling that it won't.
Then we wind up the spring season with a sequel, or a prequel, that is, of Peter Pan, the Tony Award-winning Peter and the Starcatcher. That will be performed April 22nd, the 23rd, 24th, and 26th. And again, we've got another children's story prequel. Everyone's familiar with Wicked, which is based on the, I think, 1995 novel. This was based on a novel from the early part of this century. Another example of taking a children's story and turning it into a prequel story.
The play was adapted from a novel, Peter and the Starcatcher, by Dave Barry and Rick Elise. Dave Barry I've read a lot of. He used to have a column, maybe still does, or Substack or something.
Yeah, he won a Pulitzer Prize as a columnist for the Miami Herald back in the, I think, 1980s.
And I loved his sense of humor, and then so he brings that to the book. The adaptation is really good, and it's hilarious. This is what I took some students to see it off Broadway. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's not really seriously trying to set up the backstory of Peter Pan and how all that happened. Everybody will love this. It's so much fun. And it's fun for the group of actors I've got. They're already really excited about this.
You're listening to the Lindsey Wilson View from the Hill podcast. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson Office of Public Relations. I'm talking to folks in Lindsey Wilson's theater program, Professor Robert Brock and Kassidy Phelps. To read more about Lindsey Wilson's theater program, you can dial it up on the World Wide Web at lindsey.edu/theater. That's also your location to head when you're ready to buy a ticket for one of the Spring's 3 productions. Now let's get back to my conversation with Robert and Kassidy. Kassidy, we mentioned you're going to be directing a grand night for singing. One of the challenges I would imagine when you're presenting a song independently and separately from a production is to capture that spirit, that moment that song represents, whether it's from Oklahoma, West Side Story, or something more modern or recent. How do you work with the actors to, instead of just perform the song, represent the song and what it was meant to be when, say, Sondheim wrote it in West Side Story?
Mm-hmm. We're hoping to actually include just a little bit of setup before the songs begin, so maybe a few lines before the song starts to help give context to the audience. But I really want to emphasize with each actor or singer, I guess, in this, that we talk through, what is going on in this song, what is happening in the show, how does that tie into the show, how do you apply that to your life, what does that feel like for you, so just making sure that they can apply it to the whole musical as well as their life as well, so they can relate to it.
Performing a song is so much different than singing a song, isn't it?
It is. And we tried to emphasize that in auditions as well, especially the callbacks. We re-emphasized, you're not just singing a song. We want you to perform this because it is musical theater. It's not just something choral, or something that they are just simply singing just to sing. So we really wanted to emphasize that for sure.
Robert, you mentioned that one of the reasons you selected Belfast Girls is because of what's going on with the partnership with the English program in terms of the Irish studies, but also because there are a lot of female students in the theater program. One of the things you do in the theater program here at Lindsey Wilson is you play to the program's strengths. You select plays that reflect the strengths of the actors at the time. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, that's just a reality for us. Well, I don't know that we've always had more women than men, but 75% of drama that has been written is written for men. 75% of the roles, I heard that somewhere. And I think it's at least close to the truth. And so it doesn't make it real easy in choosing plays, because what I'm looking for is to create opportunities for these kids to grow, to be challenged, to succeed. And so I have to find really good stuff. And going back any kind of classical thing makes that difficult. But we've managed pretty well, I think. So in choosing plays and choosing the season, I'm looking at who I have and what they do well and what they need, probably what they need more than anything. What kind of challenges do they need to meet to find something? Because a number of these seniors that are in Belfast talked about when we did heroines, which were long monologues of women from Greek and Roman myth who are just barely mentioned in the myth, but this Ovid, the Roman poet, actually wrote these long monologues of what the women had to say. They were really challenging to put put our young actors into those positions and get them into that and try to embody that, women who have been stepped on and a lot of stuff, and they loved it, and they keep referring to it that was a big change for them. So, working off of that, Belfast Girls is that completely. These are living, breathing characters. I mean, they're off the streets, and they're going to have to find that. I mean, Shiloh Rules was the same. So we've been doing a lot of plays with mainly women in it, but that's kind of who we've got in the program, and I think it's helped them a lot, and I think the shows have been really good. And
really, that's what any artistic director does. I mean, in some respects, it's no different from being a coach, in that if you have a certain makeup on your basketball team, you play a certain style of basketball or football, you do the same in the performing arts as well.
And I can look at them and see what they do in one role and go, oh, I can imagine them in this, and I can see them in something that's not exactly that kind of role. It's different, it's going to challenge them, but I see that they could handle it. And so, I mean, for me, a lot of this is not let's do a show, but let's do something that can pull something out of you don't even know is there, that's going to be required. This character is just going to really challenge you. But then if you're thinking about going on to graduate school or professional theater, you have expanded your range. And so I think that's a lot of the way I've thought of this program, basically with everyone.
That's Robert Brock of Lindsey Wilson's theater program. You also heard from Kassidy Phelps. Again, for more information about Lindsey Wilson's theater program, it's scheduled for this spring. You can dial it up on the World Wide Web. To get there, point your URL to lindsey.edu/theater, and that's theater spelled R-E. And that's going to do it for this 19th edition of The View from the Hill for the 2025-2026 school year. Be sure to encourage your friends, co-workers, family members, associates, and neighbors to subscribe to View from the Hill. They can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on the university's YouTube channel. View from the Hill is produced by Shelby Burton. She's Lindsey Wilson's Assistant Director of Public Relations and Media Producer. And until our next edition, I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations. Thanks so much for listening. So long, everybody, and have a nice day.